So this is a follow-up video to a video I did a little while back about Marco versus Big Mom, and how, well, during that clash between Marco and Big Mom, it was very clear, to me at least, that Marco got dominated by Big Mom, but at the same time, Big Mom put respect, I think, on Marco's name. And the reason why I'm doing this follow-up video is because, of course, in the comment section of that video, polarizing, obviously, the subject matter at hand is innately power scaling in general is always polarizing. That's what's kind of fun. But that being said, I did see a few people kind of push the notion that Akainu, during Marineford War, he supposedly dominated Marco. Akainu dominated Marco, Big Mom dominated Marco. There's an equivalent there. I had to rewatch and reread the entire thing when it comes to Marco and Akainu. And I kind of maybe understand why some folks believe that Marco got dominated by Akainu, but I think it's really misguided. So let's go through it step by step, piece by piece, inch by inch, and brick by brick, and go over this quote-unquote Akainu dominating Marco. So, first of all, from a manga standpoint, in chapter 574, page 7, Marco finally gets his cuffs off, and he tag teams with Vista, and they get 2 shots on Akainu. And then Akainu states that hockey users are a handful, hard to deal with, and then he reforms his body. So it's unclear if Marco and Vista actually damaged Akainu, but at the bare minimum, if he did get damaged by their attacks, he just brushes it off, not a big deal. Then in chapter 575, page 5, Marco blocks Akainu's punch from taking Luffy and Jinbei's life when he wanted to kill Luffy, and then afterwards, in comes Whitebeard and he just devastates Akainu. Then later on, in chapter 578, after Crocodile saves Jinbei and Luffy, him, Marco, and the rest of the Whitebeard commanders and pirates stand in front of Akainu to stop Akainu from going any further. And then afterwards, in chapter 579, page 3, there's a small panel of Marco and a few scratches on him on page 3, but relatively he's fine. Then on page 8 and 9, we see Curiel on the ground, defeated by Akainu, and then Akainu leading Marines behind him, telling them, "Do not tolerate evil, destroy the pirates." And then he leads these Marines in a mad charge. There's another small panel of Marco in that same chapter on page 11 saying a Navy guy when Kobe steps in front of Akainu, and then afterwards in comes Shanks, and then we all know Shanks stops the war. So essentially speaking, when you look at the manga, when it comes to Marco versus Akainu, there's not a single gram, not a single speck of quote-unquote domination when Akainu and Marco had their clashes. Not a single gram of domination exists in the manga, which is why I found it so confusing. I'm like, wait, at what point did Akainu dominate Marco? Like, Big Mom had Marco, and Marco couldn't do anything. He could just sit there and get devastated by Peril Sparrow. And yet somehow there are some folks, not a lot of folks, but there are some folks that give Akainu almost the same amount of gas in the pre-time skip when he crashes against Marco, but in the manga, there's no evidence of that at all. But the key word here is in the manga. And then I realized when I was going over the manga, oh wait, hold on. This is around the time, a decade ago, where Marineford War in the manga was very popular, and then the anime became even more popular because of how intense and how epic it was. And I think a lot of folks have gotten into One Piece, like let's say around a decade ago, and have never actually read Marineford War. If you read Marineford War, there is no evidence, again, that Akainu dominated Marco. But in the anime, it is slightly, I'm gonna use the word slightly different. So let's go through it real quick. In the anime, in episode 483, Vista and Marco, they do their tag team. And very quickly here, compared to the manga, he visibly is bleeding. Like we see blood splurts from the attacks of Vista and Marco in the anime. So signifying even more so compared to the manga that he got damaged. But again, he just reforms and then he's good to go. Now, episode 484, Marco blocks Akainu's punch and gets pushed back slightly. Then he rallies the troops And then after he's done rallying the troops, he gets blown back by Akainu before Whitebeard steps in there. So in the manga, again, there is no sign of any domination. Whereas in the anime, Marco does get actually blown back by Akainu's magma punch before Whitebeard comes in there and shuts it down. Then episode 487, Crocodile saves Jinbei and Luffy, and then Marco and company stand in front of Akainu. Then Marco and Akainu initiate a clash, there's a shockwave, and then that scuffle begins. Then episode 488, Akainu does the Hound Blaze, which blows through all the other commanders' attacks, essentially, with the exception of Marco. Marco blocks the Hound Blaze wholesale. He just blocks it like a weird phoenix spiral thing. And then later on in the episode, Curiel and Vista, they stand in Akainu's way. And then from there, we see Curiel get hit by a magma fist. He's on the ground, and then Akainu rallies the troops behind him, and then they go forward before Kobe shuts it down. In the anime, there are really only two things that indicate Akainu domination. The first one, again, is episode 484, where there is that kind of pushback between Akainu and Marco. Like, let's say think of Luffy and Doffy in Dressrosa, where in the manga, the King Kong gun just blows through the 16 holy bullets with ease, and then Doffy gets deaded. But in the anime, there is more of a tussle between the 16 holy bullets and the King Kong gun, and then Luffy muscles through, breaks the strings, and then punches Doffy through the ground. And the case is similar here in the anime, where there's more of an actual tussle between Marco and Akainu, then Akainu overwhelms Marco, and then he gets blown back. The second sign is, in episode 488, there's more of Akainu solo against the commanders and Whitebeard pirates. Then we see him leading the troops. And in fact, you see when Kobe stops Akainu in both anime and manga, you see a group of Marines behind Akainu, and then you see the commanders and Whitebeard pirates on the adjacent side. However, in the manga, it is far less evident. We see no clashes in the manga between Akainu solo versus the group, and then the next time we do see Akainu is when he has the Marine boys behind him. Now, there is a panel in chapter 579 where we do have the broadcast of the Navy guys being split into two groups, one going towards the Whitebeard pirates and another group going for the Blackbeard pirates. So it is a fair assumption to say these guys were the guys behind Akainu that came in later on, but how long they were there for, we have no idea in the manga. We just see them behind Akainu when Curiel is down. Whereas in the anime, we do know, because we do see Curiel and Vista by themselves try and stop Akainu, who is by himself. So even though the scene still weighs in Akainu's favor, absolutely it does. It is nowhere to the point where you can argue that he was dominating these boys, let alone specifically Marco. Because again, we see Marco in that small panel, and he's clean. So at the end of all of that, the difference between Kizaru and Akainu against Marco is that Kizaru couldn't dominate or overwhelm Marco a single time, with the exception of when Marco wasn't looking, because the big man, Whitebeard, had a heart attack, and then when he was caught off guard, Kizaru could get the lasers in. And even still needed the other guy to come in there with Kairoseki cuffs to shut down Marco. So Kizaru could never, as far as I could tell, in that war, dominate Marco one-on-one wholesale. Whereas in the anime, Akainu has one pushback on Marco. Just one. Eventually. Akainu in this situation, compared to Kizaru, is a little bit better, which makes sense to me because I do put Akainu over Kizaru. However, he's not that much better because Marco, in all the engagements for the most part, is still fine. And on top of that, he can block Akainu's attacks. Again, with the Hound Blaze, he blocks it completely in the anime. Completely. Now that we see all the evidence at hand, there is not a single moment, in particular with Marco and Akainu, that would be of the same ilk as Big Mom just choking the chicken. Nothing of that sort exists with Akainu in Marineford War. Therefore, it is heavily implied that Akainu, though he is stronger than Kizaru, I'd argue, he could not dominate Marco. And also, on a side note, Curiel is alive, which may not mean much, but that's a fun fact right there. So on a final note, does Akainu win that fight? Yes. I think Akainu would beat Marco. Absolutely. However, this is not an easy fight for Akainu. Now, granted, there are some folks out there that do suggest that you should not use Marineford War for power scaling, which I do understand the argument. Absolutely, I do. And I agree, but only, let's say, 1/4 or 1/5 of the time. I would use for power scaling, but in certain cases, not so much. Like, for example, in terms of Armored Haki. Armored Haki is a concept that is not even fully fleshed out until, let's say, the post-time skip. For example, we know that Jinbei has it in the post-time skip, but in the pre-time skip, he tries to actually punch Akainu right before Akainu blasts a hole through his chest, but that punch doesn't work. So there are some weird inconsistencies for damn sure if you use Marineford War. But again, that's like 1/4 or 1/5 of the time. So that being said, I would say in the case of Marco and Akainu, Marco would get a few good shots in on Akainu, but Akainu would ultimately overwhelm him. Even though Marco has supposedly infinite regeneration, I think it's tied to his stamina. I would argue that at some point his stamina would give way, and eventually he would be unable to regenerate from Akainu's attacks. But until then, I don't think Akainu does any significant damage to Marco, and Marco continues to recover from the vast majority of Akainu's attacks. And since we can't argue that Marco can hurt Akainu, then yes, Marco can get shots on Akainu, absolutely. Any meaningful shots, like long-lasting scars? No, probably not. But Marco would do enough damage, and he would be so resilient to where Akainu would have to probably start using his more powerful skills and more powerful techniques against Marco. And if Marco's regeneration is literally infinite, like literally under all circumstances infinite, and not tied to stamina, which would be shocking if that was the case, then if this is going to be a battle of attrition that may last for a period of days between Akainu and Marco, until Akainu could, let's say, do some sort of sealing magma tidal wave or some of that sort, and then encase Marco in a magma chamber of some kind so Marco couldn't escape. Or in theory, Akainu could maybe attack fast enough to actually beat out Marco's recovery rate and then defeat Marco by that method. But we have never seen Akainu attack at that fast of a rate. And even still, we saw Kizaru's Yasukai no Magatama, which is light particles, and Marco could recover from all of that. So that one I think is a bit iffy on Akainu's part, since Kizaru couldn't do it, and Kizaru was faster than Akainu. If, again, big if Marco is earnestly, honestly, infinitely regenerating at all times, despite stamina, which teeters more so on the extreme diff rather than the high difficulty, which I think in the case of an Admiral versus Marco, I think that's very likely and very plausible. Even let's say in the post-time skip, when Akainu's now Fleet Admiral, I assume that he's stronger now than he was back then. That's my assumption on Akainu. But I give Marco that same courtesy too. You can argue that in Akainu's face, he got exponentially stronger, whereas Marco maybe not so much. Because they both had their battles. We had the payback war with Marco and the boys against Blackbeard, and then we have Akainu versus Aokiji. I would say that over the course of time, they both got stronger. That being said, even in the post-time skip sense, if we assume that they both got stronger, let's say Akainu a little bit more stronger in terms of his exponential growth, right? Even still, if Akainu's to beat Marco, high diff, minimum, okay?
Okay.
So this is the follow-up video, once again, to that video on Big Mom versus Marco. Akainu, though impressive in Marineford War, never dominated Marco except for one pushback, and calling it domination is, I think, hard pressed, like extraordinarily hard pressed. We have to respect Marco the Phoenix. The man is impressive. He's shown it against the top guys in the verse, like the Admirals. However, when it comes to the Yonko, once again, they appear to be a bit of a different breed. But let me know your stance on the subject matter at hand. Be sure to rate the video. It is not that hard to do. I guarantee you all that, because you have a device called, I'm pretty sure you do, Zamaosu. You use Zamaosu to click, rate the video, to click, subscribe, to click on that bell to join the squad. And of course, as always, feel free to please do comment in the comment section down below. Peace out, y'all, and have a nice god damn day.